Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something absolutely massive: convolutional neural networks. We aren't just talking about basic facial recognition on your phone here. We're breaking down how autonomous vehicles parse chaotic urban environments in real time, and how medical AI spots tiny anomalies that a human eye would completely miss. Understanding how computers process and interpret visual data is literally one of the most thrilling advancements in modern tech. So if you're ready to get into the precise mechanics behind these breakthroughs, you are in the exact right place. Let's get started. So let's kick things off with a massive question. How exactly do machines understand what they're looking at? I mean, this has been the ultimate detective story in computer science. For decades, researchers wrestled with what's known as Moravec's paradox. They figured out that teaching a computer to do high-level reasoning, like playing chess, was actually relatively easy. But teaching it low-level sensoromotor skills, like just recognizing a cat in a photo, incredibly hard. We humans just glance at a scene and instantly know what's going on. Translating that effortless human intuition into math took years of grueling research. But today, we're cracking the code on how we finally taught a machine to truly see. Think about looking at a bird perched on a branch. For us humans, it's instant, right? We just abstract the visual data and cross that semantic gap without even trying. But a computer, it doesn't see a bird. It just gets this barrage of sensory input from light sensors firing off. Teaching a machine to cross that massive semantic gap, to extract actual actionable features from raw light and map it to a concept, is a monumental challenge. You have to bridge this huge divide between low-level pixel data and high-level semantic meaning. Now, before we go any further, we really need to nail down what machine vision actually is. It's the analysis of criteria in images or videos to apply interpretations for predictive or decision-making tasks. And let me be clear, it is not just image processing. Image processing makes a picture brighter or sharper or slaps a filter on it. Machine vision extracts meaning to trigger an actual action. It's about giving a system the visual intelligence it needs to make a real-world decision, whether that's steering a car away from an obstacle or flagging a defective part on an assembly line. When we apply deep learning to this, the tasks we can pull off are just staggering. We're talking about localization and object detection, which means drawing a precise bounding box around every single pedestrian or vehicle on a busy street. Then there's semantic segmentation, knowing exactly which pixels belong to the road and which belong to the sidewalk, which is absolutely critical for self-driving cars. And pose estimation, calculating the exact geometry and joints of a human body. This is actively powering the next generation of sports analytics and robotics. These aren't parlor tricks. They're the building blocks of real-world AI. All right, section 1, the pixel problem. Let's get into exactly why standard algorithms just crash and burn when trying to solve this. Well, the root of the whole issue is unstructured data. Traditional algorithms absolutely love neat, tidy, tabular databases. Standard spreadsheets with nice, clean columns for names, dates, prices. Visual data doesn't fit that mold at all. An image is a massive, messy, high-dimensional matrix of information. It completely lacks the structure standard algorithms rely on. Dealing with unstructured data requires a totally different approach because the spatial relationships between the data points are just as important as the data points themselves. Imagine a handwritten number 0. To you and me, that continuous curve is super obvious. But to a computer, it's literally just a giant grid of numbers, ranging from 0 for pure black to 255 for pure white, with shades of gray in between. It's basically a massive spreadsheet of pixel intensities. And here's the kicker. If you try to flatten this two-dimensional grid into a single one-dimensional vector to feed into a traditional neural network, you instantly destroy all those critical spatial relationships. The curve is gone. The proximity of the top of the 0 to the sides completely obliterated. And that brings us right to why traditional multilayer perceptrons, or MLPs, completely fail here. First off, they don't consider locality. Once flattened, they treat pixels that used to be right next to each other as totally independent, unrelated inputs. Second, MLPs heavily rely on exact pixel positions. So if our handwritten 0 shifts just 2 pixels to the right, the network is completely lost. It memorized exactly where the ink was, not what the ink actually formed. Treating every single pixel as an independent feature is just a fundamentally flawed way to understand vision. Enter our hero. Section 2, the CNN solution. This is the ingenious architecture that finally cracked the pixel problem. The best way to really wrap your head around this architectural leap is to think about playing Where's Waldo. An old-school MLP tries to just memorize the entire massive page all at once, hoping to spot Waldo based on absolute pixel coordinates. A convolutional neural network, though, it works way more like a magnifying glass. It scans systematically across the image, hunting for small, local patterns, like his red and white striped shirt or his round glasses, step by step, section by section. It doesn't need to process the whole picture at once. It just searches for those localized features. Which leads us to the absolute core breakthrough concept here. A neuron does not have to see the whole image to discover the pattern. By focusing entirely on restricted local regions, CNNs become incredibly efficient. They hunt for a specific texture, or an edge, or a curve, regardless of where that element actually shows up on the screen. That localized approach is the true secret to unlocking machine sight. And this kicks off something really beautiful: representation learning. Starting at the visible layer, at the very bottom, the network learns foundational features, super simple edges and subtle color gradients. Moving up through the hidden layers, it starts combining those edges to find corners and intersecting lines. Go up another level, and it combines those corners to map out distinct object parts, like a wheel, a window, or an ear. Finally, at the highest layers, it synthesizes all of this hierarchical data to output a complex object, like a car or a person. It builds intuition logically, step by step. All right, section 3, how convolution works. We know what it does, so let's actually pop the hood and see the mechanics. Here is your structural roadmap for the CNN pipeline. It basically executes in 3 main phases. First is convolution, where we mathematically scan the image to extract meaningful feature maps. Second is max pooling. Now this step is absolutely crucial. We systematically shrink the feature map down to keep only the strongest, most important activations, which saves massive amounts of processing power. Third, we flatten. After distilling all that data down to its most potent form, we flatten it out to prepare for the final classification. So watching this pipeline run, say we're processing an image of a cat. It goes straight into a convolution block, and then immediately hits a max pooling block. And importantly, notice how this loops: convolution, pooling, convolution, pooling. We repeat this paired process multiple times to drill down into deeper, way more abstract feature representations. After passing through all those blocks, that highly distilled data is flattened into a traditional fully connected network to finally say, yep, that's definitively a cat. Let's zoom in on that very first crucial step. To convolute, mathematically, means to re-estimate an input as the weighted average of all the inputs around it. I know, that sounds like complex calculus, but it's actually just a brilliant, highly intuitive matching game. You're literally just comparing a known pattern against a small patch of the image to see if they align, and that produces a brand new feature map highlighting exactly where that pattern exists. Think of a 6x6 image matrix and a smaller 3x3 filter right next to it. The entire process is literally just sliding that 3x3 filter across a larger image matrix, one step at a time. The filter acts as a tiny, dedicated feature detector, hunting for its absolute favorite pattern, like a sharp diagonal edge. During each step, we multiply the overlapping values and sum them up. When the pixels in the image closely match the weights in the filter, boom, it registers a massive hit. That number tells the network exactly where the feature is. And this sliding technique, it introduces the absolute magic of weight sharing. Because that exact same 3x3 filter passes through the whole image, the network doesn't have to learn new rules for every single pixel. It completely solves that translation invariance problem we talked about earlier. If our handwritten 0 shifts to the right, the sliding filter is still going to pass over it and detect it. Plus, weight sharing drastically reduces the number of learnable parameters. We are talking about saving massive amounts of computational memory and hugely accelerating training times. By intelligently breaking unstructured images down into local patterns and hierarchically building them up layer by layer into highly complex representations, CNNs have literally given sight to machines. Which leaves us with a pretty wild final thought. If convolutional neural networks can be trained to see and efficiently extract virtually any pattern from visual data, what human tasks will they master next? The possibilities across medicine, transport, and beyond are just endless. I really hope this explainer gave you the foundation you need to understand whatever comes next in deep learning. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.